La Chambre procédera maintenant à des déclarations à l'occasion du 30e anniversaire de l'événement tragique à l'École Polytechnique de Montréal. Je donne maintenant la parole au très honorable Premier ministre.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Il y a 30 ans aujourd'hui,
30 years ago
à
today,
l'École Polytechnique de
at
Montréal,
École
14
Polytechnique
femmes
in Montreal,
ont été
14 women
assassinées
were
dans un
murdered
attentat
in an
anti-féministe.
anti-feminist attack.
30 ans depuis
It's
que
been 30
Geneviève
years
Bergeron,
since Geneviève Bergeron, Hélène Colgan,
Nathalie
Croteau,
et Barbara
and Barbara
Daigneault ont été
Daigneault
tuées
were
de
killed
sang-froid.
in cold blood.
30 ans
30
depuis que la
years
vie d'Anne-Marie Edouard,
since Anne-Marie
Maude
Edouard,
Aviernick,
Maude Aviernick,
Maryse
Maryse
Lagagnère,
Lagagnère,
Maryse
Maryse
Leclerc
Leclerc,
et Anne-Marie Lemay
and Anne-Marie
s'est
Lemay
terminée dans les
were
circonstances
killed
les plus tragiques.
in the most tragic
30
of
ans
circumstances.
depuis qu'on a
30
perdu
years
Sonia
since
Pelletier,
we lost Sonia
Michel
Pelletier,
Richard,
Michel Richard,
Annie
Annie
Saint-Arnaud,
Saint-Arnaud,
Annie Turcotte
Annie Turcotte,
et Barbara
and Barbara
Klachnik-Vidajovic.
Klachnik Vidajovic.
Nous nous rassemblons aujourd'hui
We are gathered
pour
here
pleurer
today
la perte
to
de ces
mourn the
femmes,
loss of
de ces
these
filles,
women,
de ses
these
sœurs,
girls, these
de ses amis, de ses
sisters,
collègues.
these friends and colleagues.
Mr. Speaker, each December, as we honor the memories of those 14 women, the survivors, and the families, we promise to do better. But the reality is that in 30 years, things haven't changed enough. Women, girls, and people of diverse gender identities still face unacceptable and preventable violence. Violence that destroys lives, families, and communities. It is more than time for change. It is more than time to put an end to gender-based violence, including the national tragedy of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Because it is more than time to build a country where everyone is safe and where everyone's rights are respected and realized. Mr. Speaker, to find the way forward, we need only look around. From coast to coast to coast, people are coming together and saying, enough is enough. Students and parents, women and men. They're saying no to misogyny, to sexism, to hatred, and to discrimination. To the survivors, advocates, and everyday Canadians who have taken up this work, your courage is powerful, and we will always stand with you. Monsieur le Président, nos gestes
Mr. Speaker,
en disent plus long
action speaks
que nos
louder
mots.
than words.
C'est pourquoi on
That
s'appuiera
is
sur les
why
progrès
we are
réalisés
building on
grâce à la
progress
stratégie pour
made
prévenir et
with
contrer la
our
violence fondée
gender-based
sur le
violence
sexe
strategy
pour élaborer
in order to
un
create
plan d'action
a national action
national.
plan.
C'est également pour cette raison qu'on investit
For
dans
this
des
same reason, we
organisations
are
menées par
investing
des femmes
in
au Canada
organizations led by
et
women
ailleurs dans le
in
monde.
Canada and elsewhere in
Et on
the
peut pas
world.
s'arrêter
But we
ici.
can't stop at
On doit
that.
faire plus
We have to do
parce
more
qu'encore aujourd'hui, nos
because
communautés
still
pleurent la
today,
perte de leurs
our
proches
communities are mourning
raison
the
de la
loss
violence
of their
armée.
loved ones because of armed
This fall,
violence.
I announced that we will strengthen gun laws and ban the type of weapons used at École Polytechnique. These weapons, designed to kill the largest number of people in the shortest amount of time, have no place in our communities, in our streets, in our country. Too many lives have already been lost, and thoughts and prayers won't stop another tragedy. Mr. Speaker, it's time to take real steps to end gun violence in Canada. Le 6 décembre
On December 6,
1989,
1989,
j'étais au Cégep,
I was at
à
CEGEP,
quelques coins de rue de
a
l'École
few streets
Polytechnique.
from École
Je me
Polytechnique.
souviendrai toujours
I will always remember
de cette soirée meurtrière.
that murderous evening.
Aujourd'hui,
Today,
alors que nous nous souvenons tous
as we
de cet
all
événement
remember
terrible il y a 30
that
ans,
terrible event 30
nous
years
devons
ago,
agir
We need to
pour faire
do
en sorte
something
que ça ne se
to make
reproduise
sure it
jamais.
never happens again.
Pour nos sœurs,
For our sisters,
pour nos filles,
for our daughters,
pour nous tous.
and for us all.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I now recognize the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Elle était 14. 14
There
jeunes
were
femmes
14 of
intelligentes
them,
et
14
pleines
intelligent
d'ambition.
and
Elles
ambitious
avaient un
young
avenir
women
prometteur.
who had a
Elles
promising
avaient
future.
la vie devant
They had their
elles.
whole lives in front of them.
Personne ne sait quand viendra
No
son
one
heure.
knows when their time will come.
Et ces jeunes femmes-là
And those young
n'auraient
women
jamais pu
could
deviner
never have
que la
guessed
cruauté d'un
that
homme
one man's
s'apprêtait
cruelty
à leur
would
voler
bring their
ce qu'elle
lives
avait de
to an
plus
end.
précieux, la vie. Exactement 30 ans passés,
Exactly
elles se
30 years
rendaient
ago
à
today,
l'université.
they went to
Pour
university.
plusieurs d'entre elles,
For
c'était
many
la
of them,
dernière
it was the
journée
last
de
day of
cours.
class.
C'est normalement une journée
Normally a
heureuse.
day of celebration.
En se levant ce matin-là, à quoi
What were they
pensait-elle?
thinking when they woke up that morning?
Peut-être qu'elle souriait en pensant
Maybe
au temps
they were
des fêtes qui
smiling,
approchaient.
happily thinking of the
Dans
Christmas season
quelques
that was
jours,
approaching.
elles reverraient leur
In just a
famille
few days,
et
they
leurs
would be
proches.
able to see their
Peut-être
families and
même
loved ones again.
qu'une chanson de Noël leur venait
Maybe they were
d'être.
even
Elle
humming a
était
Christmas
sûrement
tune.
un peu nerveuse.
They
en
were
pensée
undoubtedly
aux
nervous,
examens
thinking of the
qu'elle
exams that they
allait
would have
devoir
to take
écrire
later
bientôt.
that day.
Peut-être qu'elle rêvait au projet
Maybe they were
qu'elle
dreaming of
espérait
other projects for the future.
entreprendre. There were 14 of them, 14 smart young women filled with ambitions. They had a promising future. They had their whole life ahead of them. They deserved to have their whole life ahead of them. And those young women could never have guessed that a man's cruelty was about to rob them of what was most precious to them, their lives. Exactly 30 years ago today, they were heading to university. For several of them, it was the last day of school. It should have been a happy day. When they got up that morning, what were they thinking about? Maybe they were smiling, thinking of the holidays that were coming. In a few days, they would see their families and loved ones. Maybe they had a Christmas song stuck in their head. They were probably a little nervous, thinking of the exams they would have to write soon. Maybe they were daydreaming about their future, dreaming of what they could become. Tous ces espoirs et ces rêves feront brutalement détruits
Those hopes and
en
dreams
après-midi.
were brutally
Lorsqu'un homme
ended that
commit un crime
afternoon
violent et
when a man
horrible.
committed a
À la
violent and
Polytechnique, le
horrific
6
crime.
décembre
On December
1989,
6th,
il sépara les
1989,
femmes
at the
et les hommes
Polytechnique,
et tira
he
sur les
separated the men
femmes.
and the women and began
Il
to
en
shoot the
assassina
women,
14
murdering
et fit
14
plusieurs
and
autres
wounding
blessés.
many others.
Geneviève Bergeron,
Geneviève
Hélène
Bergeron,
Colgan, Nathalie
Hélène Colgan,
Couture,
Nathalie
Barbara
Couture,
Dagneau,
Barbara
Anne-Marie
Dagneau,
Edward,
Anne-Marie
Maude
Edward,
Havernier,
Maude Havernier,
Barbara
Barbara
Kutznik-Vidovich,
Vidovich,
Maryse Laganière,
Maryse
Maryse
Laganière,
Leclerc,
Maryse
Anne-Marie
Leclerc,
Lemay,
Anne-Marie
Sonia
Lemay,
Pelletier,
Sonia Pelletier,
Michel Richard,
Michel Richard,
Annie
Annie
Saint-Arnaud,
Saint-Arnaud,
Annie
and
Turcotte
Annie Turcotte
ont perdu la vie.
lost their lives
Ces
that day.
14 noms méritent d'être
Their
lus
14 names
et honorés.
deserve to be read and
Les
honored.
victimes de la Polytechnique ont été
The
assassinées
victims
ou
of the
blessées par
Polytechnique
un homme
massacre
qui les
were
ciblait
murdered
parce
or
qu'elles
wounded by a
étaient
man
femmes.
who targeted them simply
30
because
ans
they
plus
were
tard,
women.
en ce jour,
30 years
le
later,
6
we
décembre,
pause on this day,
nous prenons le
December
temps
6th,
de souligner
to
la
mark
journée
the National Day of
nationale de
Remembrance and
commémoration
Action
et
on
d'action
violence
contre
against women.
la violence faite aux femmes. Those hopes and dreams were brutally ended that afternoon when a man committed a violent and horrific crime. On December 16th at the Polytechnique, in an unthinkable act of hatred and spite, he separated the men and the women and then began to shoot the women, murdering 14 and wounding many others. The names of those killed deserve to be read and honored. The victims of the Polytechnique were murdered or wounded by a man who targeted them simply because they were women. 30 years later, we pause on this day, December 6th, to mark the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women. En tant que père de 3 filles merveilleuses, en tant que
As a
frère
father
de
of 3
2
wonderful
sœurs
young
brillantes,
girls, as
et
a
en
brother
tant
to
que
2
mari
brilliant
d'une femme
sisters,
sans pareil,
and as a husband of an
ça
amazing
me fait
wife,
mal de penser
it
que ces
pains me to
femmes
think
que
that
j'aime
these
tant,
women that
et
I
toutes les
love,
femmes
and
aujourd'hui,
all women
doivent
today,
encore
are
se
still
préoccuper
concerned
de
by
leur
their own
sécurité
safety.
parce que ce
simply
sont
because
des femmes.
they are women.
Il est tout à fait inacceptable que
It
la
is
violence
completely
faite aux
unacceptable.
femmes
The
soit
violence against women
d'actualité.
remains an issue
C'est
to
pourquoi
this
je me
day.
propose et je propose à
That
tous
is
les
why I
Canadiens de ne pas
resolve
se
not
contenter
to be content
d'être
with
respectueux
simply
envers les
respecting
femmes.
women,
Soyons
but I
également
call on
proactifs
all
et
Canadians to be
prouvons par des
proactive
gestes
and
concrets
demonstrate with
à
our
quel point
actions
nous
how
avons
much
à
we
cœur
value
la
the
sécurité
safety,
et la dignité
the
de
dignity,
chaque vie,
and the
de chaque
value of
femme.
every life, of every
30 ans plus
woman.
tard, honorons la mémoire de ces victimes
30 years later,
As
let
a
us
father
honor
of
the
3
memory of those
wonderful young
victims.
girls,
As a brother to 2 brilliant sisters, and as husband to an amazing wife, it pains me to think that these women I love, and all women today, are still concerned for their own safety simply because they are women. It is unacceptable that violence against women remains an issue to this day. That is why we must all resolve not to be content with simply respecting women, but we must call on each other, on all Canadians, to be proactive and demonstrate with our actions how much we value the safety, dignity, and value of every life, of every woman. Let us consider the messages we send about the value, worth, and dignity of women in our speeches, in our actions, in the examples we set for our sons and daughters. May we each decide that we will each do our part to make Canada a safer place, and in this way, 30 years later, let us honor the memory of the victims of the Polytechnique. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Je donne maintenant la parole à l'honorable député de Shefford.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Sur le mur de l'École
On
Polytechnique,
the wall
Une
of
plaque.
l'École Polytechnique, there's a plaque.
14 noms y sont
14
gravés.
names are engraved on it.
Geneviève Bergeron,
Geneviève Bergeron,
Hélène
Hélène
Colgan,
Colgan,
Nathalie Croteau,
Nathalie Croteau,
Barbara Daigneault,
Barbara Daigneault,
Anne-Marie Edward,
Anne-Marie Edward,
Maude Aviernik,
Maude Avernick,
Barbara Kluchnik,
Barbara
Vidajevic,
Vidajevic,
Maryse Laganière,
Maryse Laganière,
Maryse Leclerc,
Maryse Leclerc,
Anne-Marie Lemay,
Anne-Marie Lemay,
Sonia Pelletier,
Sonia Pelletier,
Michel Richard,
Michel Richard,
Annie Saint-Arnaud,
Annie Saint-Arnaud,
Annie Turcotte.
Annie Turcotte.
14 vies volées.
14 lives stolen.
14 femmes, Monsieur le
14
Président,
women, Mr. Speaker,
assassinées
were
parce
murdered
qu'elles étaient des
because
femmes.
they were women.
14 femmes,
14 women,
14 filles, conjointes,
14 daughters,
sœurs,
spouses, sisters,
amies,
friends,
arrachées à ceux et
cruelly
celles qu'elles
taken
aimaient,
from the ones that they loved
à ceux et
and
celles
those
qui
who
les
loved
aimaient.
them.
L'attentat antiféministe de Polytechnique
The
n'a pas fait que
anti-feminist
14
Polytechnique
victimes.
massacre didn't result in
Elle
just
en a fait
14
beaucoup
victims.
plus.
It
Des
made
milliers,
many more victims,
Des millions.
thousands, millions.
Le Québec tout entier, 30 ans plus
30
tard,
years later, the entire province of
vit
Quebec
encore avec ce
still
fardeau,
lives with this weight,
ce sentiment désagréable de
this
s'être
stain
sali.
of what happened that day.
C'est arrivé chez nous.
It happened in our
Un
province.
geste commis par l'un
It was
de nous.
committed by one of us.
On a tous
We all
perdu
lost
quelque
something
chose le 6
on that day,
décembre
December 6th,
1989.
1989.
Un homme est entré dans une classe,
A man entered a
dans un lieu
classroom,
de savoir et de
a place of
connaissance,
knowledge and learning.
a séparé les hommes et les
He
femmes,
separated the men from the women,
a laissé partir les
then
hommes,
let the men go,
aligné 9
lined
femmes
up 9 women,
et a fait feu.
and opened fire.
Une des étudiantes,
One of the students,
Nathalie Provost,
Nathalie Provost,
a fait face à cet homme
looked
armé,
this man in the eye
a essayé de le
and tried
calmer.
to calm him down.
Écoutez,
She said,
nous sommes juste
Listen,
des femmes étudiant
we are
l'ingénierie,
just engineering students.
pas forcément des féministes prêtes à marcher dans les rues
feminists
criant que nous sommes
who are
contre
going
les
to
hommes,
march in the
juste
street
des
and say that we
étudiantes
are
cherchant à
anti-man.
mener
We're
une vie
just
normale.
students trying to live our normal lives.
6 sont mortes,
6 of them were
3
killed
ont été
and 3
blessées.
of them were injured.
Juste des étudiantes
They were just students
cherchant à mener une
trying to
vie
go about their
normale.
normal lives.
Et puis il quitte la classe et
Then he
sème
left
la
the
terreur
classroom
pendant 20
and
minutes
sowed
dans
terror
l'école.
throughout the school for the next
Une
20
école,
minutes.
Monsieur le Président. C'est
A
ce qu'on
school,
souhaite
Mr.
tous pour
Speaker.
nos enfants.
A school is where we want all of our children to
Va à
go.
l'école,
Go
apprends,
to school, we tell them.
trouve le métier qui te
Learn.
convient,
Find
contribue à
your
la
chosen
société,
career. Give
fais
back
de
to
ton
society.
mieux.
Do the best you can.
Dans une école, une
In a
université,
school, a
c'est là
university,
que la lâcheté, la haine,
this
la
cowardice,
misogynie
this
et la
hatred,
violence ont
this
sévi
misogyny
le 6
hit
décembre
so hard on December
1989.
6th, 1989.
Il ne suffit pas de commémorer
It's not enough
Polytechnique.
to mark the events of the
Il ne suffit
Polytechnique.
pas de se rappeler
It's
où
not
nous
enough
étions,
to remember
avec
where
qui
we
nous
were
étions.
or with whom we were.
Ça ne suffit pas.
It's not enough.
Non,
No.
30 ans plus tard,
30
il
years
faut
later,
continuer le
we
combat
need to continue the
pour qu'il n'y ait
fight
plus jamais
so
d'attentat
that never
antiféministe
again
du 6
will an
décembre
incident like that
1989.
of December 6th, 1989 occur.
Dans nos livres d'histoire, 14 noms sont gravés.
In our history books, there are 14 names.
Geneviève Bergeron,
Geneviève Bergeron,
Hélène Colgan,
Hélène Colgan,
Nathalie Croteau,
Nathalie Croteau,
Barbara Daigneault,
Barbara Degnaud,
Anne-Marie Edward,
Anne-Marie Edward,
Maude Aviernik,
Maude Aviernik,
Barbara Kluchnik,
Barbara
Vidayevic,
Klichnik, Vidayevic,
Maryse Laganière,
Maryse Laganière,
Maryse Leclerc,
Maryse Leclerc,
Anne-Marie
Anne-Marie
Lemay,
Lemay,
Sonia Pelletier,
Sonia Pelletier,
Michel Richard,
Michel Richard,
Annie Saint-Arnaud,
Annie Saint-Arnaud,
Annie Turcotte.
Annie Turcotte.
Pour vous, nous
For
devons
you,
agir.
we must act.
Vous êtes à tout jamais les
You will
porte-étendards de la
always
lutte contre
be
la
the
violence
standard
à l'égard
bearers
des
in the
femmes,
fight
une part
against
de notre
violence against
conscience,
women.
un
You will
élan qui
always
nous
remain in our
inspire
minds,
à
an
faire
inspiration
mieux,
to us to do
à
better
être une meilleure
and to
société.
be a better society.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr.
30 ans
Speaker,
plus tard,
30 years
et
after
après
that
30 ans après
infamous
ce jour
day,
infâme, engageons-nous
let us
solennellement
commit
à
solemnly
lutter contre la
to
misogynie,
fight misogyny,
à lutter contre la
to
haine
fight hatred,
et à combattre la
and
violence
to
à l'égard
fight
des femmes.
violence against women.
Cet engagement doit dépasser les mots
This
et nous
commitment
avons en cette Chambre
needs
la capacité de
to go
poser
beyond
des gestes
words.
réels
In this
pour
house,
que l'attentat
we
antiféministe
have
de
the
Polytechnique
potential
ne
to
se
take real
reproduise
action
pas.
so that the Polytechnique massacre
Nous
never
pouvons
happens
resserrer le
again.
contrôle des armes à
We
feu
can
et je parle ici
enhance gun
en
control.
particulier
And here,
des
I am
armes
in
d'assaut
particular
et des armes de
referring to
poing.
assault weapons and handguns.
Resserrer le
We
contrôle
can
des
tighten
armes aux
gun
frontières.
control at the border.
S'assurer
We
que
can
les
make
acquéreurs
sure
d'armes à feu ne
that
soient pas
those
des
who
menaces
buy
pour la vie de
firearms
qui que
do
ce soit.
not pose a threat to anyone.
Nous devons agir contre la violence
We must
quotidienne
also
aussi à
act
l'égard des
against the
femmes,
daily violence
ces
suffered
claques
by
sur la
women.
gueule,
Those
cette
slaps
violence
in the
sale
face,
que subissent les
that
femmes
terrible
simplement parce
everyday
qu'elles sont des
violence that
femmes.
women suffer simply because they are women.
Il faut bouger,
We need
il
to
faut
take
agir.
action.
Nous avons un devoir de vigilance
We have a duty to remain vigilant.
pour ces femmes que nous avons
For
perdues
those women
le 6
that we
décembre
lost on December 6th,
1989,
1989,
pour ces femmes que nous avons
and
perdues
for all of the
depuis,
women that we have lost since then,
pour que ça n'arrive jamais plus.
so that this never happens again.
Agissons.
Let us act.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I now recognize the honourable member for Burnaby South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Aujourd'hui, je prends la parole au nom de tous les néo-démocrates pour me souvenir du jour terrible du 6 décembre 1999.
1989.
14 femmes ont été
when
tuées
14
par un
women
homme
were
qui les
murdered by a
détestait
man
pour leur
who hated
sexe.
them simply because they were women.
Even after 30 years, it's still horrific to think of these deaths. How young the women were and how much promise their lives held. But what continues to hit me today is how ordinary violence and the message it sends to women is. We need to stop putting the responsibility of being safe on women and girls and start putting that responsibility of respecting women on men. La haine des femmes qui a alimenté le tireur ce jour,
The
il y a
anti-woman
30 ans,
hatred
n'a
that
pas
led
disparu.
the shooter to his
C'est
actions
ici,
30 years ago
tous les
is
2
not
jours et
gone.
demi qu'une femme, une
Every
fille
2.5
est
days,
tuée dans notre
still
pays.
today, a woman
Le
is killed in
plus
this
souvent,
country.
le plus souvent par quelqu'un
Most
qu'elle
often,
connaît.
she's killed by someone she
It's
knows.
here when women walk home at night with their keys in their hands and a friend on speed dial to make sure they make it home. It was in Toronto last year when a bitter young man with a violent hatred for women ran down 10 people with a van. And it is here every single day when Indigenous women and girls are dehumanized, stolen from their communities, and murdered. 30 ans après que les Canadiennes et Canadiens aient dit
30
plus
years
jamais
after Canadians
à la
said
suite de la
never
tragédie
again,
de l'École
following
Polytechnique,
the Polytechnique
nous
tragedy,
devons reconnaître,
we
nous
need
devons reconnaître
recognize
collectivement qu'il nous reste
collectively
un long chemin à
that we
parcourir
still have
pour respecter
a
cet
long way to
engagement.
go to
Le
respect that
changement
commitment.
systémique commence quand les gouvernements
Systemic
prennent
change
au
starts
sérieux
when
la
governments
violence des
take
hommes à l'égard des femmes
male
comme
violence against
l'épidémie
women
qu'elle est.
seriously, takes it for the
Avec
epidemic
un
that it
plan
is.
d'action national
With a national
financé
action
pour
plan,
mettre fin à la violence basée sur le genre.
we can end violence
It
against
means
women.
calling out damaging language that blames women, dehumanizes survivors, and excuses men's brutality wherever it appears, in our media or in our justice system. It means listening to women and believing them when they share their experiences. It means men working every day to become better feminist allies and holding other men to account for sexism and misogyny. It means making sure that when a woman, girl, or trans person needs access to counseling or to a shelter, it's there for them with no wait, no matter where they live. It means that groups providing these services on the ground have stable funding so that they can focus on helping women escape violence and rebuild their lives, not on scraping by each funding cycle. And it means all of us in this house naming this epidemic for what it is, men's violence against women. Aujourd'hui, 30 ans après ce horrible
Today,
6
30
décembre,
years after
nous nous
that
souvenons
horrible day,
et pleurons 14 jeunes
we
femmes
remember the
qui ont été
14 young
tuées parce
women
qu'un homme
who were killed
détestait les
because
féministes.
one man hated feminists.
J'espère que dans 30 ans, nous
I hope that 30
considérerons
years from now,
ce mouvement
We will consider this
comme le moment
movement,
où, en
or
tant
this
que
moment,
pays,
rather,
nous avons dit
as the
assez.
moment when we said enough
There is
as
no
a
such
country.
thing as an isolated incident of violence against women. There are only choices that we make as Canadians. And today, we say that one death is one too many. That toxic masculinity hurts us all. Que toutes les femmes et les filles ont droit à la pleine
That all
humanité,
women and
à la
girls
sécurité,
have right
au bonheur,
to
à la
humanity,
liberté et
dignity,
l'ambition.
respect, freedom, and
Et
ambition.
que nous appuierons
And
ce choix
that
par
we
l'action,
support
à la mémoire
the
des
choice
milliers de
to
femmes et
act
des
in the
filles
memory
tuées par la violence
of the
des
women
hommes.
and
En
girls
ce jour,
killed
nous ne
by
leur
men.
devons rien de moins.
Today, we
Merci.
owe them nothing less. Thank you.
I now recognize the honourable member for Fredericton.
Mr. Speaker, honourable members, I would like to acknowledge the unceded, unsurrendered homeland of the Anishinaabe and Algonquin nations on which we stand.
Today is the National Day of Commemoration to remember the massacre at the Polytechnique School on December 6, 1989. It was an unconscionable anti-feminist act. It was not a single isolated incident, but the direct consequence of rampant misogyny in our society. That violence, which targets women specifically, still has not been eradicated from our communities.
Misogyny continues to exist today and has seen a resurgence as of late. As with racism or homophobia, we must name it so we can end it. There can be no place for gender-based hatred in our society. This day commemorates a living history of ongoing violence against women and girls and members of the LGBTQIA2+ community, particularly those that also face other forms of discrimination for their race, religion, or economic status. Whether it is in the echoes of a fight from the apartment upstairs, in hateful comments on Facebook or Twitter, or in the backlog of case files of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, we must not forget that there is still so much violence and marginalization facing women across this country. We must work to educate society about consent and about our responsibility to call out violence where we see it, to intervene, and to help prevent instances of abuse. As we must support women who are seeking to end the violence they face, we must believe them.
Yesterday, Radio-Canada said that New Brunswick was the province where the most domestic murders take place, followed by a high suicide rate, the highest in the country. 70% of these homicides happen in rural communities. These tragic deaths prove that there is a crying lack of essential services to support women who are victims of this violence.
We need to support women who continue to push boundaries and break through the glass ceilings in their own worlds, despite the challenges and sometimes the dangers that brings. Today, I remember the 14 women cut down in the massacre at École Polytechnique. And today, I commit to women across Canada, indeed across the world. I believe you. I support you. There is no room for misogyny in Canada. I remember. Je me souviens. Nwebi de Hanuman Udj. Merci, Waliwin. Thank you.
J'invite les députés à se lever et observer une minute de silence en mémoire des victimes de l'événement tragique survenu il y a 30 ans à l'École Polytechnique de Montréal.
Incident which occurred 30 years ago at the École Polytechnique of Montreal.
Orders of the day.
Ordre du jour, adresse en réponse au discours du trône.
Address and reply to the speech from the throne.
Resuming debate, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Appreciate some of the applause from the other side, but they haven't heard what I'm about to say yet, so. They might want to retract it in a few months. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And as we take our seats and take up the people's business in this chamber, we all share in a privilege of protecting the hopes and dreams of our neighbors and communities and our fellow Canadians through the work we do in this chamber. And as I return here for the 6th time, I am so grateful to once again have earned the confidence of my constituents in Regina Qu'Appelle. Because this seat does not belong to me, it belongs to them. None of the seats in this chamber belong to any of us, including the Prime Ministers. Instead, these seats all belong to the people who sent us here. And they sent us here to get to work. Canadians sent us here to make sure the country works for them, for their jobs, their livelihoods, their cost of living, for their health care, their environment, the safety of their communities, and the security of our country on the world stage.
Mr. Speaker, it's clear that we have a lot of work ahead of us, and regardless of which party we belong to or the region we come from, we all must listen and learn, grow, and improve. We all together on both sides of this chamber, we must expect more of each other and of ourselves.
This is particularly true in light of the results of the last election, in which the people sent a clear message to all of us that the status quo had failed, that the approach of the previous 4 years just wasn't good enough. Canadians want better, and as the strongest opposition in Canadian history, we are going to make sure that they get better.
Hear, hear.
We will spend this Parliament proposing constructive solutions to Canada's most pressing problems. We are prepared to work with Canadians of every political stripe, focused on implementing ideas that actually work. This does not mean that we will compromise on the principles that make us Conservatives, and it certainly does not mean that we will shirk from our responsibilities as Her Majesty's loyal opposition to hold this government accountable every day, in every way, for its ethical lapses, errors, and misdeeds. Canada's Conservatives are always prepared to look for common ground, Mr. Speaker.